We've all heard the term malnutrition, right? But what does it actually look like on a clinical level? Well, today we are going to pull back the curtain on something called protein energy malnutrition. We're going to dive into its two very different faces and the incredibly precise step-by-step path to recovery. But before we get into the weeds, let me ask you something. What do you think is the single most widespread nutritional disorder on the entire planet? Well, the answer is the very thing we're talking about today, protein energy malnutrition. So here's our game plan. First up, we'll define the problem and get a sense of its scale. Then we'll get into the really fascinating part, the two distinct phases of severe malnutrition. And finally, we'll walk through the two critical phases of treatment. First, stabilization, and then the road to recovery. Okay, let's start by really getting a grip on this global health challenge. Because before we can understand the different types, we need to be super clear on what PEM actually is and how it's measured.
You see, protein energy malnutrition, or PEM, isn't just one single thing. It's a whole spectrum. It's easily the most common nutritional deficiency disorder in the world, and it can range from cases that are pretty mild all the way to severe, life-threatening forms that need immediate medical help.
So how do doctors even measure this? Well, one of the classic methods is the Gomez classification, which is based on a child's weight for their age. And just look at the numbers. To be classified as grade 3, that's severe malnutrition, a child weighs less than 60% of what they should. I mean, just let that sink in. That's a massive deficit. And this is where it gets really interesting, because severe malnutrition doesn't just look one way. It shows up in two primary and almost visually opposite forms: kwashiorkor and marasmus. And understanding the difference between them is absolutely critical for getting the diagnosis and treatment right. To really get this, let's use a super simple but really effective analogy. Think about building a house. The energy a child gets from food, like carbs, that's all the raw materials, the bricks, the lumber, the pipes. But protein is the cement. It's the stuff that binds everything together and makes the whole structure strong and stable. Got it? Okay, keep that idea in your head, because here is how that analogy plays out for real. On the left, we have kwashiorkor. This is a protein deficit. Think of it this way. You've got the building materials, the energy, but you have no cement. What happens? The whole structure's faulty. The defining sign is edema, or swelling. The child might have a puffy moon face. But on the right, you have marasmus. This is a deficit of both energy and protein. So you have no building materials and no cement. The result is just severe wasting, an old man's face on a tiny baby with a body weight that's plummeted below 60%. And get this, look at the appetite difference. The child with kwashiorkor often has no appetite at all, while the child with marasmus is usually starving, absolutely ravenous. And here's the thing that's so incredibly dangerous about kwashiorkor. That swelling, that edema, it's dangerously deceptive. It can completely hide the severe muscle wasting that's happening underneath. It might not look like the classic picture of starvation we have in our minds, but believe me, it is every bit as severe. Okay, so now that we can spot the problem, the big question is, how do you fix it? This is where the World Health Organization's two-phase protocol is so brilliant. Let's start with phase 1, which covers that first critical week. It is all about one thing: stabilization. And here is the most important, and maybe the most counterintuitive, idea of this entire first phase. The goal is absolutely not to start aggressively feeding the child. Their body is just too fragile. The top priority is to stabilize them and treat all the immediate life-threatening complications that go along with severe malnutrition. You have to walk before you can run. So the priorities are crystal clear. First things first, you have to manage dangerously low blood sugar and low body temperature. Then you rehydrate, but you do it incredibly carefully with a special solution called Risomol, so you don't overload their system. Next, you correct any electrolyte imbalances, and this one is key. You treat for infection with antibiotics right away, even if you can't see an obvious infection. And only then, after all that, do you start very cautious, small, frequent feeds with a special starter formula called F75.
But notice this huge do not for phase 1. Iron supplements are completely avoided. Why? Because in a body that's this malnourished and also fighting off infection, giving iron too early can actually feed the bacteria and make things much, much worse. It just goes to show you how delicate this whole balancing act really is.
So what happens after that first critical week? Well, once the child is medically stable, the swelling starts to go down, and this is the big one, their appetite comes roaring back, the entire focus shifts. We are now entering phase 2, the road to recovery. And the name of the game here is simple, and it's ambitious. Catch-up growth. All that caution from phase 1 is in the rearview mirror. The strategy now is to give the body everything it needs and more to rapidly rebuild muscle and fat and get that child back on their proper growth curve. So the playbook changes completely. That starter formula gets swapped for a high-energy, high-protein formula called F100. The amount and frequency of feedings go way up to drive that weight gain. And remember that iron we were avoiding? Now is the time to bring it in. But it's not just about food. What's just as important is providing emotional and physical stimulation, playing, talking, caring, to help the brain recover right along with the body. And this table just shows you the dramatic shift in strategy perfectly. Just look at the numbers for F100 in the rehab phase. The energy target can almost double, and the protein target can literally quadruple compared to the stabilization formula. That is the kind of high-octane fuel you need for serious catch-up growth. And how do you know it's really working? This is the number that clinicians are looking for, a weight gain of more than 10 grams per kilogram of body weight every single day. That's the benchmark. It's a clear, quantifiable sign that the rehab is working and that child is truly on the move towards recovery. So let's do a super quick recap of the most important takeaways. 1. PEM has 2 very different forms. Kwashiorkor, which you'll remember by the swelling, and marasmus, which is all about severe wasting. 2. Treatment is a careful, deliberate 2-step process. 3. Phase 1 is all about stabilizing the patient, not just feeding them. And 4. Phase 2 is when you hit the accelerator and focus on rapid catch-up growth. And that leaves us with one final big picture thought. We have a clear, effective, scientifically proven roadmap to treat this awful condition. So the real question becomes, if we know how to fix it, what are the biggest hurdles still standing in the way of getting this life-saving care to every single child who needs it?